You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. From Mamamia, I'm Mia Freedman, and you're listening to a very exciting episode of No Filter. I have a confession to make before we start. I didn't know the name Mackenzie Arnold until around a month ago. To be fair, I also thought that a soccer pitch or a soccer field was about 1 kilometre long. I've grown so much during this World Cup and I've learnt so many things. Because like a lot of Australians, I'm a fairly new convert and a fairly new follower of the FIFA Women's World Cup. But like the millions of people who tuned in to watch the Matildas play every game and the hundreds of thousands of people who watch them live, I definitely do know the name Mackenzie Arnold now. And so do most Australians.
And saved by Arnold! Advantage Matildas again!
Because Mackenzie is one of the 23 women who make up the Matildas. She's also known as the Defence Minister of Australia, or the Brick Wall, because of her ability to defend Australia's goals. She's also found herself at the centre of a lot of attention lately, and she's had hundreds of people coming up to her and thanking her for what she and her team have done. So what does that feel like, to be famous literally overnight, when the whole world wants to suddenly know everything about you, and strangers on the internet know the name of your dog and the name of your girlfriend, and the fact that you wear hearing aids off the pitch? And how does it feel to have the whole country thanking you for what you did, not just for Vibes, but for women in sport? In her only Australian podcast interview, here's Mackenzie Arnold. Like, you're proper famous now.
I don't know about the famous word, but...
When has it occurred to you, and you said it's just hit me in the last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Like, I imagine that 2-3 weeks ago, you could walk around unnoticed, and now are people falling at your feet? I mean, people in here are falling at my feet just because I'm interviewing you.
During the World Cup, obviously, when we're with the team and we've got all our gear on, like, of course, people are going to come up and say hello and whatever. But I think, honestly, it hit me the most yesterday when I just went for a walk with Mum with the dog, which we do every other day that we have before the World Cup. And this lady came up to me and she's like, "Oh, Mackenzie." And I was like, "Oh, hello." Like, I looked at Mum and I was sort of like, "Is she a neighbour?" I was like, I wasn't sure. Like, should we know her? And she's like, "Oh, can I get a photo?" I was like, "Oh, shit, of course, yes." Like, took a photo, whatever. And then I think 2 minutes later, another group of kids come up to me and I said to Mum, I said, "This is mad." Like, I just couldn't believe it. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind for sure, but definitely very different from the last couple months as an athlete for sure.
The last couple of months, I imagine there hasn't been a lot of glory. I don't mean on the pitch, but I mean the preparation for a World Cup. Everyone sort of sees the tip of the iceberg, right? Like, we see the games, we see the goals that you stop, we see the wins. But what did you actually do for the 2 months leading up? Like, how long were you guys in camp together before the World Cup started?
I think all up it's been, including the World Cup, it's been 9 weeks. So I think we must have been together for about 4 before the World Cup, 4 or 5 before the World Cup started. But we were all mainly still in our seasons over in England. So I think we had about a week to 10 days before we all headed into the Gold Coast together. Some had more time than others, but I think we had about 10 days before we came home and started camp on the Gold Coast, which was handy for me because this is where I'm from. So I had a little bit of time with the family and stuff. But yeah, you just sort of hit the ground running. I don't think it sort of hit us until we were at our base camp, which was in Brisbane, which is when it all sort of kicked off then. And we had like the Matildas all over the hotel and they'd done it like really nice for us. And I think it sort of put us in a mindset. It was like, oh, it's about to start now. I think we were just sort of in our own bubble. And then once it all started and, we saw the public and the media and everything jump on board, that's when I think it all kicked off for us for sure.
We heard a lot about the bubble that Tony, listen to me calling him Tony like he's my friend Tony, my mate Tony, kept you all in this bubble. Can you explain what the bubble was actually like? Like, what was the bubble?
I would say it was just mainly just to keep it as the same as any other camp that we've had, which is exactly what it felt like, to be honest. I think it was a little bit different in terms of, we were allowed to go out and see our family a little bit more. We had a little bit more freedom leading into it just because we were going to be together for such a long time. So he sort of gave us a little bit more freedom in that aspect. But I think it was more so the bubble just to not get caught up too much in the media and the hype going on around us. And it was just almost like, keep together, focus on what we're doing, the training, the friendly games. It was just I think he really wanted to keep it like a close-knit kind of group and just focus on what we were doing rather than the hype of the outside and what was about to happen for us.
When you actually started playing your games, did the bubble become sort of tighter? Were there limitations on, I mean, you all had phones, so you've all got access to what the world's saying about you. How did you manage that?
I think for me it was a little bit different because I was still so focused on making sure I was going to get the starting spot. We still had that friendly against France before we actually played Ireland, and I had a good idea that I'd probably play, but I knew that I needed to play well in order for him to start me in the first game. So I think I was a lot more focused on that, and I didn't really get caught up. I don't think, because I wasn't one of the main players, so to speak, I don't think I was really in the forefront of that with the media and everything. So I think that probably helped me a lot, just to sort of keep internal and just, hang out with my family and focus on my training and everything. So I think that helped a lot. But yeah, I think it sort of really took off after the Ireland game, I would say, just because of the hype around it and I guess how the game went, and ended up being such a close game and such an important goal. So I think it all happened then. But yeah, before I didn't really get caught up in it too much because I knew that I had to focus on what I had to do to keep my spot.
Do you all have different ways of coping with it, I imagine? Is there a kind of a best practice that you should never read what's being said about you, or you shouldn't go on news sites, or like what parameters do you personally try to put around how you manage it once games start?
I mean, it's hard because, if you play well, you probably love reading everything about you. Everyone loves you and think you're a great player, but if you play bad, it can be very detrimental to you. It's hard not to read into what they're saying, even though, some people are just behind a keyboard, just not even knowing the game of football. But, you see that, for example, if someone say, oh, Mackenzie should be dropped, you read it and you think, oh no, I think I'm fine. But of course it's going to kill you and you can't help that sometimes. So yeah, I think it has different ways it can affect you for sure. And I definitely rode that roller coaster throughout the World Cup after the first game and then onto the second game, which I didn't play the best. And it was definitely an emotional roller coaster. But I think being together and knowing that we were going through it together, I think it helped a lot. I think we really leaned on each other through those moments for sure. And I think that really helps.
When do the players find out whether they're starting for the game? How long before?
The night before, we always have a meeting just before dinner, and he'll put up the starting lineup on the PowerPoint screen, and that's when we know, and we go through all the set pieces and everything, and yeah.
So out of how many people in the room, how many of you are on that screen?
Well, he'll put up the starting 11 and then he'll put the game changes there as well. So we're all up on the screen, but 11 of us are essentially in the starting lineup.
So how many people are having a really bad dinner?
Oh, it's hard to say. I wouldn't say it's a bad dinner, but you do sort of get the idea as well leading into the meeting with trainings and stuff, who he's leaning towards, and he sort of puts up a provisional lineup. So you sort of get half an idea. But yeah, I mean, that's just the game. It's just sort of how it goes. I wouldn't say there's any good or bad dinners, but there's definitely better dinners than some.
You weren't always a goalie. You didn't want to be one. How did you get roped into it?
Oh, I don't think I really had another choice.
Is it because you're tall?
Yeah, basically. I don't think on the field I was too good, to be honest. I thought I was better than what I was for sure. But no, I think when I was maybe 10, 11, I think I was playing fullback in a boys' team. And then as you get older and the boys' team stop letting girls play, you sort of have to take that next step. And there was a rep team coming up for the Gold Coast, trials for that. Yeah, and I trialled on the field, I think as a fullback back then. And she basically said, look, you're probably not going to make it as a fullback. Like,
what does a fullback do?
Fullbacks are the ones beside the centre back. So there's 4 at the back and the fullbacks are these 2 wide ones.
Uh-huh. So there's a lot more running.
Yeah, a lot more running, a lot more skill, like a Steph Catley. And if you can imagine me like a Steph Catley, it's not going to happen. So she was like, no, we need a goalkeeper though. And I was like, oh God, I'm never going to be a goalkeeper. Absolutely not. So I let that go. And then again, I went back to my local club and I had to go into a girls team. And again, I didn't have a goalkeeper. I just thought, why not? I'll just give it a go. And I come from a rugby league background, so that my family was a big rugby league fans growing up. So my brother was playing and he was always kicking the ball with me, which essentially I was using my hands to catch. So I didn't hate it. I didn't hate the concept of it. And essentially I wasn't scared of the ball in that aspect. So I think that's what sort of helped me, and I just enjoyed it. And I was half decent at it, so it sort of stuck.
Until there seemed to be no glory in being a goalkeeper in terms of you have all the downside, which is when you fuck up or miss a ball, you know, you could lose, but it seems to be the most highly pressured position. I know nothing about soccer, Mackenzie, like nothing. So I'm going to say really dumb things, but it seems to me like there is just more pressure on you than anybody. How is the psychology of playing goalie versus the rest of the team different?
I would say the psychology part of it is quite similar. I wouldn't say I feel any more pressure than any other player because, you know, everyone wants to perform at their best and doesn't want to make any mistakes. But I would say what the difference is that when I make a mistake is just a lot more highlighted than you would see if, you know, someone lost a ball in the midfield compared to if I lost a ball. That's something that's about to go down. So, yeah, I would just say that my mistakes are highlighted a lot, which mainly probably causes a lot more pressure, I guess, in the end. But in terms of psychology-wise, I wouldn't say I feel more nervous than any other player because I think, you know, all of us want to do a good job at the end of the day. I think it does just come down to when I make a mistake, the whole world is going to be aware of it.
And how do you come back from that? So when a goal does get through and the other players have to, I mean, they're obviously devastated, but they don't want to make you feel worse than you already do. How does that work?
It's hard to say. I think, you know, you're never going to point out your teammates' mistakes. They're usually more often than not very aware of what they've done wrong. I think a perfect example was against Nigeria when I had that miscommunication with Alana and resulted in a goal. And our way of coping with it was we sat down. Obviously, we're very good friends. So, you know, we sat down and had a conversation about it and we just spoke like what was going through my mind, what was going through her mind and like the movement behind that. And then we had a talk with the team afterwards as well. And they were sort of like, you know, we don't care about the goals. It's just we need to look past that now and focus on the next game because ultimately if we don't win the next game, we'll be knocked out. So, you know, the girls get around you. Under no means do they ever blame you or say it's your fault or whatever. But there are different ways of coping with it. And I think my best way of coping with it would be to have a conversation about it for sure.
So like to air anything that anyone might be thinking to just clear it.
Yeah. Just take ownership of it. Like, my bad. You know, I was thinking this is why it happened. And everyone's like, yep, cool, no worries, move on.
So when you're in the goal space, how can you even be talking to me? I'm so sorry. Because I'm one of the ones that are like, I'm in love with this sport. I've newly fallen in love with this sport, right? So I'm a latecomer to this, even though all of my children have played soccer and my eldest son is a ref. But can you see what's going on down the other end? Because obviously we've got at home, we've got an aerial view, but how much can you see when all the action's down the other end?
For the most part, I can see most of it. It's maybe a different angle to what you guys have.
Yeah.
I can definitely see the back part of it, so I know what's going on because I tend to move up with the back line as well, so I'm not hanging in my goal space for the whole time, but I tend to move up. I'm quite close with them, to be honest, so I can see most of what's going on.
The camera's not on you when the action's up the other end, so I can't see what you're doing. Like, are you moving to stay warm and stay, you know, alert?
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest parts of my game is I try to move with the play to keep my concentration going because I know that if I switch off for a second and it's down my end, you know, cause a mistake or a goal or whatnot, whatever it is. But that's another way that I cope mentally in the game is making sure I'm always talking to my back line, moving with them just to make sure that I'm always in the game with them, you know, because sometimes it takes 10, 15 minutes and I haven't touched the ball. So that's my way of sort of making sure I stay in the game.
What do you mean moving with them?
So like when the ball is moving from side to side,
I go that side.
And follow it around just to make it, you know, if there's a through ball and I'm on this side, I can make sure I can clear up that side as well. So I sort of help them out so they're not running constantly for no reason. But yeah, just making sure I'm with the play, so going from side to side rather than just standing in the middle.
So different players, obviously, depending on what position they're playing, need to have different skills and practice different things. For you, I imagine it's not sprinting, obviously. You don't need to be able to run fast. What are the key skills that a goalkeeper needs to have?
Key skills. You need to know how to catch a ball. That helps. A lot of it, I would say, is mental. A lot more than, you know, the physical side of things like it would be for the players on the field. But you still need to have the basics, you know, like kicking a ball and your decision-making and your right technique, when to play what pass, in what time. Yeah, it's all different. There's all different kind of skills, but I wouldn't say it differs too much from on-field players. Obviously, the biggest difference would just be using my hands. So like knowing the dive technique and coming for crosses and the timing of that as well.
I want to ask about that because to me it's the jumping and the diving. So, I watched you so closely, and the part where you dive but with no sense of how you might then hit the ground, that I imagine is really counterintuitive because most people wouldn't dive and then hit the ground. Is there a way that you have to practice falling so you don't really hurt yourself? Because you're often really high.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a technique behind it, which is, I mean, it'd be similar to kicking. You've got to have the right technique to do it properly. And that's something that I've always learnt since whenever I was a goalkeeper, 16, 17 years old. So there's definitely a right technique to diving. Usually forward helps. And it probably looks a lot more painful than what it is. You tend to sort of just land on like this part of your back, which isn't as bad as what you would think. I wouldn't necessarily say to try it, but but it is just something that you get used to, and it's not as painful as it looks.
At the moment, how long have you got between when you have to play next for West Ham?
We start our first game the 1st of October. So they're in pre-season right now. So I head back tomorrow night and then get straight into pre-season on Tuesday or Wednesday.
And you came straight from there to play for the Matildas. So you're literally non-stop without a break?
Basically, yeah. Especially when these big tournaments are on. I think last year was the first time in a while that we'd gotten a break at the end of the season. So we think we had a couple of weeks there, if I'm remembering correctly. But usually when there's big tournaments like this and we need to go straight into camp, you don't really seem to get a break. But clubs like to cooperate quite well with that. So my coach at West Ham has said, take as much time as you need. We would like you back at this date, but if you need more time, then let us know. So they've been good with that.
Can you explain the difference between playing for a club and playing for your country?
I think in the past, there has been too much of a difference for me. I think looking back now, it's helped me a lot more to just sort of play exactly the same like I would in West Ham that I would in Matildas, because I think in the past I've played quite well in West Ham, and then I would come back and feel a lot more pressure in the Matildas. And I think it would show in my performances, and I think that was where I was sort of going wrong mentally. And yeah, I think it would affect my game quite a lot because I was more concentrating on not making a mistake rather than playing the game. So I try and make not too many differences between the two. Obviously, in the World Cup was very different because obviously you have your home crowd in there, and it is very, very different to playing at West Ham. But in terms of my performances, I would like to think that I played just as well in both teams.
That you try as hard. Is it like being in two different bands?
A little bit, yeah. It's the mindset of, obviously there's a lot more pressure, a lot more eyes on you when you're playing for your country. But in terms of wanting to win a game, that's never going to change. You want to win whether you're playing for West Ham, playing for Australia, whatever it is. So, yeah, you're always going to try as hard as you can, but I think it comes down to the mindset for sure.
One of the things that people found most interesting watching the World Cup was how many club teammates were playing against each other in countries. How does that work? Because you obviously know each other so intimately and you're on the same team and then you're against each other.
I mean, I think that's sort of the same with playing against, Sam, Kate, Steph. I play against them all the time in the WSL. So we've been doing that all our lives. Even in the W League back when we were playing in Australia, we were playing against each other. So I think it's just the reality of the sport. You're never going to be on the same team every single time. So it sort of helps in a way. You know how they play, you know how they work.
It's an advantage.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think too much mentally it affects you. It's just, a little bit different, I suppose.
Coming up, the very specific pre-game rituals that the Matildas found themselves doing during the World Cup. Whether or not they did nervous wheeze before running out onto the pitch, and why so many female football players date within their sport. I want to nerd out and ask you some specific questions about your pre-game ritual, starting the night before or even starting the day before if that's what you do. When does the ritual start and what does it involve? And no detail is too small for me to know.
My ritual would start, I would say, the morning of. I don't think about it too much before. I do have spaghetti bolognese the night before. Most of us do, or any type of pasta, to be honest.
Do you find it difficult to sleep the night before? Do you try to get a certain amount of sleep?
Sometimes, but I know that if I try and get a certain amount or put like a number on my sleep, I'll just stress out even more, and that'll be the end of it. I'll just think about it all night. So I do try and get at least, obviously, 8 hours, but we usually have a bit of a sleep in on game day mornings because most of our games were late anyway, so it sort of helped. But then if we don't get enough sleep, we'll have a nap before we go to the game as well.
But when you say sleep in, so what time will you get up on game day?
9, 8:45, 9.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, get up, go have some breakfast.
All together,
depending what time you wake up. Some people wake up at 7:30, some people wake up at 9:30, so a little bit different there. But I think at the start of the tournament, before the Ireland game, I went out for breakfast. So I thought the next game I have to do that. I have to go out for breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
Great that game. So I was like, oh, well, that's out the window. So I'll go back to having breakfast at the hotel. I think a lot of that comes into play when you have a lot of games because even I remember before the before the quarterfinal, actually, we had been for a team walk every single game. And then before the quarterfinal, there was so much public outside that our staff were just like, no, it's too dangerous. Like, we're just going to stay. And we were like, no, absolutely not. Like, we have to go for a walk. Like, there's just no conversation. We're going for a walk. So they were like, all right, we'll sort it out. So they took us for a walk, and obviously we won that game. So it had to happen the next game. So there's a lot of things like that.
Superstitions.
Yeah, when you think about the last game and you're like, oh, I did this, I have to do this again.
Until it doesn't work.
The second you lose, it's like, oh, that's out the window. You just start again.
On game day at breakfast, are there some people who like get quite chatty and then other people who go into themselves? And do you learn what different people's styles are pre-game?
Yeah, I would say that's probably more in the change room as we're getting ready. I think at breakfast we're still all quite chill and quite normal. We've been playing together for, over 10 years now, so we sort of know how each other work. But I would say there's definitely more of a difference in the change room than you see some people, dancing around and having a good time and sort of not focusing on the game too much because, you get nervous and everything. And then there's some people that are really like with themselves, like you sort of just let them be, let them do their own routine and like that. But yeah, there's definitely a different mood around the team on game day.
What do you have for breakfast?
Mine changes. Sometimes I have wheat bix, sometimes I have poached eggs on toast. I think the last couple of weeks I had poached eggs and avo on toast because I thought I was playing well, so I'll keep to that. Another superstitious, obviously. But yeah, it also depends the time of the game as well. So sometimes we have 2 meals, sometimes we have 3, so you don't want to have too much at one time. It's actually quite complicated. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's quite complicated, but it's a personal preference for sure.
Do you have people on staff that are saying, here's what you should do, or it's pretty much you've all been doing it for so long, you choose your own adventure? Yeah, there's a bit of both. We have a nutritionist that sends us out a plan each game day just to say what times you should be eating what. At the end of the day, if you don't feel like eating that at a certain time, you're not going to go and eat it because it's going to make you feel sick or whatever it is. But yeah, you try and stick to it as much as you can, but everyone knows that you need carbs, protein, you need your good fats. So everyone knows what is good for their body. But yeah, it just comes down to personal preference. How many hours before a game do you stop eating?
Maybe 3. We have pre-match at maybe around 4. Yeah, maybe 3 to 4, but at the same time, when we get to the game, I'll have a banana. So my last big meal is the pre-match, which is maybe about 3 hours before the game. And then I'll have a snack, so I'll have a banana when I get there. And then there's the gels, so you have the energy gels, which get more carbs in, and energy drinks, yes, whatever you want really. There's lollies there. Some
of your games didn't start until late. So you had your breakfast, then what do you do? Because those hours must drag, do they? Yeah, so I think when our game was at 8, so we had, say, a breakfast at 9, we'd have our mobility and our walk at about 12, and then from 12 to about 4, that was your big downtime. So a lot of people either nap, some people go see family, some people just chill out and watch a show. I personally just like sitting in my room. I'll try and nap, but usually before those games I won't get to sleep because my mind's going too much, so I'll just sit down and watch Love Island or whatever it is just to chill out for a bit. Then you go down to your pre-match meal at about 4:30, and then you have about an hour to get ready and then you're off. We have a quick team meeting before and then we go. When we see you getting off the bus, you've all got your headphones in. What are you listening to? I actually am quite different. I listen to like a bit of country, like a bit of like chilled music. Like I like just chilling out. I don't like the big doof stuff in my ear because I think it just sort of gets me going a bit too early. Like you still have at least, I think, an hour it is when you get into the change room before you head out to warm up. So I sort of like to just chill out and just listen to what I would listen to any other day. And then once we're in the change room and whoever's on the speaker, that's when you get like your pump up music and your sing-alongs and everyone's having a dance. So it's a bit better then. But I just like chilling out a little bit more before the game. Is that when everyone takes their personal headphones off and you're listening to the same thing? Is that an important part of the team bonding?
Yeah, I mean, some people I think might keep them in for a little bit longer to listen to their kind of music. But yeah, most of us get in there because it's quite, you sort of go off into your different little areas. So when you go in and you quickly get dressed into your warm-up stuff, some people go to physio and get strapped. Some people go to their hair in the bathroom. Some people go to mobility. So everyone's sort of doing their own little thing. So it's sort of just better just to have the big speaker in the middle and everyone's just sort of listening to the same thing.
Does everyone sort of do a nervous wee before you go out there?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I didn't actually know that was a thing until I started doing it. And I was like, why do I need to keep weeing?
Yeah.
And then I realised when I sit on the toilet and nothing coming out, I was just nervous.
A nervous wee.
It's something I do. I'm not sure about anyone else, but it's definitely something that I do for sure.
Because how do you balance between needing to stay hydrated, but then you can't go to the toilet, obviously, when you're out there?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, once you're out there, it's the last thing you're thinking about.
Cuts.
I definitely think about it when I'm about to walk out and I'm like, oh my God, I need to wee. And I'm like, no, you just wee, you're fine.
Yeah, it's just nervous wee.
Yeah, it is. So I think a lot of the time it's in your head. Once the kickoff happens, you sort of forget all about it anyway.
When the game's over, can you talk me through what happens if you lose? Because I imagine the ritual, whether you lose or whether you win, is different. Or is it?
Really honest with you, it's actually quite similar. Obviously, the mood's a bit down, so, we wouldn't have the music on. We might have music on, but no one's really vibing to it. Everyone's sort of in their own heads and whatever, but the ritual is quite similar. We'll go into the change room, we'll do our ice bath, go have a shower.
Can you tell me about the ice bath? Because it sounds horrific.
Well, it's horrific enough that I actually don't do them. I don't. I think there's about 3 or 4 of us that don't believe in ice baths. I do the one a day after the game, I will say that, but after trainings and after the game, I don't find any benefit from it.
What's it meant to do?
Decrease your inflammation and stuff. It's like with the blood in your body. How
long are you meant to stay in there?
It depends. Some people do 2 in the cold, 2 in the hot, 2 in the cold.
Minutes.
About
2 minutes.
Some people go 10 minutes straight in the cold. Yeah, it's a bit of a personal preference. So there's definitely different processes that you can do, but I have 0 minutes in there. So
0 sounds like a really good number.
Yeah, I'd rather stay out of it. I just watch them.
And then when people have finished torturing themselves, what happens? Are you like starving? Does everyone reach for their phones to see what texts they've got from loved ones? Like,
I would say that's probably one of the most. We tend to have a shower, and I think once you get ready and you're sort of waiting for everyone else to sit down, we're just on our phones having a look. But at the end of every game, whether we win or lose, we'll wait till everyone's ready. We'll sit in our little lockers and just have a quick chat, whether 2 people talk, 1 person talks, 5 people talks, whatever it is, and just give your opinion on what's happened, good or bad, what needs to be better, and you sort of have a little bit of a debrief just to get it all out, and then we'd get on the bus and go back to the hotel.
What's the difference between the captain and the other players? What does Sam do that you guys don't?
I mean, not a lot. I mean, she's definitely a leader, and like we look for her on the field and off the field all the time, but in terms of, I don't think there's a massive difference. I think she's said it before that, what she likes about this team is that we can all be leaders if we need to be. Like, she can rely on us as much as we rely on her. And I think that's probably one of the key factors that makes us such a good team. I think, like I said before, we've been together since we were 16, 17 years old. So I think we've all really learnt how each other works and what each other needs. But in saying that, she is an amazing captain, and I do think she brings so much to the team that we haven't had in the past as a captain, and she's unreal. Honestly, she really is unreal, but she's definitely not someone that you look to and you think, oh shit, she's the captain. Like, she like, she really like brings herself down with us, and like we're all just on the level playing field, and I think that helps her a lot as well.
One of the things I loved was watching all of you after the games, like whatever teams you were playing, whether you won or lost. And I was always struck by how long everyone stayed on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a normal thing? Because especially if I lost, I would probably want to just go away and just not have cameras and not be near the other team. Is it sort of protocol that you got to stay out there for a certain amount of time, or is that deliberate?
It was more so everyone trying to take everything in. I think especially after we lost the semi-final, I think obviously it was such a heartbreaking and disappointing time, but we just wanted to stand out there and just realise that what we had actually achieved. We did just lose the semi-final, but we have just played a semi-final in front of a packed-out home crowd at a World Cup. And again, it happened against the Sweden game as well. That was our last game, so I think everyone just wanted to, really take in what we've just achieved. as heartbreaking as the loss was. I think I just sat out there after the England game and I just looked up and I just couldn't believe it, especially having our families there. And I think a moment that you sort of wanted to soak in as much as you could before heading back in.
Because it's very vulnerable that time.
Mm-hmm.
Watching everybody and sort of the heartbreak, and also the beautifulness of when, I guess, people that you know from the other teams, when people go and console each other from opposing teams.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's just obviously we're on different teams and, you want to beat them at the time, but some of them are your really good friends that, you played with for 10 months out of the year. So at the end of the day, you're always going to be mates after it. And it was nice for them to come and console us as well.
You've become celebrities, and I know that doesn't necessarily sit well with you, and there's been this massive interest in all of your personal lives and your private lives, and I want to ask how that feels because it's really new.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't see the heightened parts of it. I'm still the same that I was 6 months ago, so it's hard for me to really answer that question because I'm still feel the same. I understand there's a lot more attention on us now for sure, but in terms of me and how I feel and how I live every day, it hasn't changed. And I'm not sure if it actually will yet. For sure. I can't wrap my head around it right now.
Is there a correlation between how much of you the public gets to have and what your sponsorship opportunities are? Can it be a bit of a trade-off that's part of, the public wants to know who's the person behind the jersey?
Mm-hmm. To be honest, I think I'm quite myself, whether it's on social media, in real life, whatever it is. I think I feel more comfortable when I'm by myself and not trying to act like a professional, athlete. I always obviously want to be a role model to anyone that I can be to, but I just feel more comfortable when I'm myself, and I think a lot more people can relate to that as well, which helps me and whoever that is as well. So I think I just find it a lot more easier just living my life how I always have, because it seems to be working okay so far, I think.
How do soccer players make money?
It's definitely getting better. We have our contract with our national team. Obviously, it's not as much as the men, but we can still get by on it, of course. And then we have our club team as well that, depending where you play, you have quite significant money over there, especially in the bigger clubs as well. And it's growing and growing each year, which is amazing to see.
So it's like a salary?
Yeah, salary-wise, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have your sponsorship money as well. It obviously differs between what kind of player you are and your profile, but that would be, I would say, the main income for football players.
How do you feel about social media?
I don't mind it. I think there's good and bad sides of it. Like I said before, I've experienced both sides and it can be very damaging, unfortunately, but I do think that's the reality of being an athlete and having your profile on show for the world to, cast their opinion on. And I could say that and people could say, well, delete your social media then, which is totally fair. But at the same time, I think that's part of our brand and part of our profile. And to be honest, looking at social media now from my point of view, like it has helped me so much that just seeing how many people actually do support me and whether it's a good or bad thing, I gained so much confidence off impressing people and seeing that they were happy with how I played. And I think because I haven't played that role for so long, knowing that I played well and I thought I played well and seeing the public agree with me and think that I played well as well, it helps your mindset. It gives you a lot of confidence. I guess I would like to say that I'd get my confidence from somewhere else. And I do. I think my teammates' opinions is what matters the most to me. And that's something that I've always counted on. But yes, of course, seeing the public and seeing the acceptance and the celebrations that they have for you, it helps a lot. And I think that's where social media can be such a positive impact on you.
I've just got a couple more questions before you should just go back to the beach with your gorgeous dog, Jack. It's Jack, right? Your dog?
It is Jack, yes.
See, that's weird that I know the name of your dog.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's really weird, but I just saw it on your social media. You posted this morning, not stalking at all. I was going to ask you, in terms of you've had hearing challenges, you wear hearing aids now, COVID, what does an athlete do when there's no games? Like when your identity and your job, obviously I imagine, money and stuff aside, but just your identity, what do you do when you can't do your job?
Yeah, I mean, COVID was a difficult time for everyone. I think it was a time that we didn't even know how to prepare for or how to even get through it. But I think for us, it was almost like we had to keep training. We knew it was going to open up eventually. So we just had to stay ready, as frustrating as that was, because we had to work out by ourselves, which as football players, we are definitely not used to. It was actually a moment that I had just signed for West Ham. So I was actually able to apply for a visa that got me over there. So I knew that I was always going somewhere eventually. So I just had to keep fit. And in terms of my profile and my brand, I don't think I really had one back then anyway. So it was just normal for me. I was fine. I was just going through the motions and waiting for that time where my flight was going to take off. So I don't think it affected me too much, thankfully. But if anything, it was a little bit lonely. I think it was just, especially being a part of a team for so long and having to work out by yourself, it was almost just like, all right, when can I see my friends again? When can I get back into a team environment again? So yeah, fortunately for me, it didn't bother me too much.
The life of an athlete's very specific, just finally. And I guess it's no coincidence that so many soccer players date other soccer players. Is it because it's a lifestyle that it's really hard for other people to understand and it would just be impossible to manage with a civilian?
Yeah, I mean, that's a bit of a hard one. I think it's more of a relatable kind of thing. I think, you go through so many of the same experiences together, whether being male or female. It's just such a different lifestyle. And I think so many people struggle to understand that, even just the different commitments you have to make and the limited time that you have to make for other people. You know, like I don't see my family for 10 months out of the year. So it's just hard to relate to, and it's hard for people from the outside looking in sometimes tend to struggle to understand like what you actually have to, give up or sacrifice as a professional athlete. So yeah, I would think it's more so just a relatable kind of thing and just finding comfort in understanding each other.
We wanted to say thank you on behalf of everyone, really. I mean, I'm sure that's what everybody's been saying to you, have they, when they come up to you? Just thank you.
Yeah, they have been saying thank you. It's been unreal. It's been crazy. You know
what you've done just for bonding, just for vibes,
That's honestly so cool to hear. It's crazy to hear people say thank you now rather than, well done or congrats, and people just saying thank you. It's honestly so rewarding. It's been amazing.
From my mother to my daughter, we had 3 generations of people around the television cheering you on, and when they heard that I was interviewing you today, they were just like, oh my God, tell her thank you, tell her thank you, tell her we were just such big fans and we worship her. So I hope you're going to have a bit of a rest. Sounds like not.
I'm sure I'll find some time. I'll find some time somewhere.
Mackenzie, thank you so much. Lots of love, and we can't wait to cheer you on. Maybe not I suppose at West Ham, yeah. I guess we'll cheer you on at West Ham. When are you playing for the Matildas again?
We play in October in Perth for our Olympic qualifiers.
Oh, that's soon. And the Olympics are next year?
The next year, yes, in Paris.
How do you feel about the brick wall? I should have asked.
It's still something I'm getting used to. I'm just not Mackenzie brick wall. I don't really know how it goes, but it seems to work, so I'll just ride with it right now.
It's funny how brick wall has managed to become a compliment. I mean, only you.
I'm still not sure how I feel about being a brick wall, but I'm riding with it.
I cannot tell you how excited people were around the office and my family when I told them I was interviewing Mackenzie. There was this queue of people. Usually I'm by myself in the pod studio. No one really cares much. But I tell you what, the number of people that wanted to come in and check the sound and check the screen and adjust the mic and maybe get a sneaky selfie next to the TV screen with Mackenzie. I was the most popular person at the Mamamia office just because of my proximity to Mackenzie Arnold. That's how much Mackenzie and her team have done for the country, brought us all together. Honestly, it was an honour really to sit down with her, and you can just see in her eyes how all of this is just like this happy shock, because she's not like some of the more high-profile players like Sam Kerr or Lana Kennedy who have sort of been used to being in the glare of the media spotlight. This is new to her, and it's just so lovely to see her happy and a little bit dazed. This was actually the first and the only podcast interview that Mackenzie did before flying back to West Ham and the UK. So if you know someone who loves her or someone who loves the Matildas, share this with them. The executive producer of No Filter is Kimberly Bradish and Liz Ratliff, with sound production by Maddie Joannou. And I'm Mia Freedman. Thanks for having us in your ears.